Eddie Hearn has been sort of asked in the last few months. I think one of the biggest ones has been about belts, right? What they mean in the sport. Do they mean anything? Before I get your take on it, Adam Catterall did catch up with Eddie Hearn in Vegas, and this is what Eddie Hearn had to say about the importance of belts in boxing.
The belts matter to the fighters a lot more than it does to the fans and to the product. Right? Everybody likes world championship fights, and obviously when we've got one, we'll dine out on it. Night at world championship boxing, etc. But the reality is, the ones that really this is a problem of eradicating belts. The fighters care. Do you know what I'm saying? So you could get someone that comes in, us, PBC, Turkey Al Sheikh, and says, right, we're going to get rid of belts, and we're going to make a new belt. It's the Riyadh season belt. Yeah. The fighter will do it if the money's right, but they want to win those belts. Do you know what I'm saying? You get a lot of stick for regional belts and intercontinental belts. The fighters love it. I mean, one, they give you a top 15 ranking, but two, intercontinental champ. It's something that they really care about. Do you know what I mean? So, but it all comes down to money. No, the fans don't. But I do think the fans should a little bit. Like the way that you can basically prove greatness. Really, I know you can do it through fights, but is to really win a belt, unify the division and become undisputed. That should be every fighter's aim, and without belts you can't do that. So there's got to be a system in place, but I'm looking a little bit more simplistic in the product now in the UK to say let's just make great fights and change the format a little bit. I'm looking at loads of different formats at the moment, because I think we've got to reintroduce stuff, we've got to freshen it up.
Give me an example.
There could be a.
I like the idea of
like a midweek series. I mean, there could be anything. Do we bring back Fight Camp? Do we change? I mean, for me, main event should be at 9 p.m. Right? Perfect. We have so many fights on cards. What's happening at the moment is someone's coming to support their fighter at 3:50 p.m., which is the first fight of the night. They sell 400 tickets, and then the main event's on 7 hours later, and they just go, I'm going to the pub. I'm going out for dinner. You've got to keep people in there. And I don't want to actually... I love doing 10, 11 fights a night because I actually think it's great value. But the market isn't bothered about that value. The punter isn't bothered about that value. Not enough people... The hardcore are, before the bell. We got 8 fights, 9 fights, And then, but the other guy, look at Riyadh season in Los Angeles. People were moaning that it was going on too late. I was looking at it going, me, how are you moaning? Every fight, like this is... But people are saying it was a bit long, wasn't it? It's like, was it? So sometimes we've got to take a little bit of a back seat and remove ourselves from the hardcore world that we live in and just go, what do people actually want? Well, they might want to get there at 6 and leave at 10 and go 6 fights. Like one thing I always find fascinating with the UFC is when I went to the UFC London, I couldn't believe, with all due respect, how basic the production was. Like, as in, like, all right, next bloke walks out, there's no music, like, no one's announced him. And next thing, there's 2 randoms in the ring, and then they're announcing it, but it's real quick. And then the fight finishes, quick one with you, right, boom, and they're walking again. But, like, we live in a world, and look, my sister runs the TV production, she's outstanding, but they're very arty. They're very, we're going to a promo now, and we're going to interview both people, then we're going to go back to the studio and talk there for 10 minutes, then there's going to be an advert. Do you know what I mean? Is it like when I went to the Olympics and watched the boxing, I really liked the fact that it was just like a factory. A better interaction. Do we look at scoring? Do we look at, and if the ball...
You're a fan of open scoring, aren't you?
I think open scoring is fantastic because when you get... I mean, open scoring is actually...
Is there not a danger then of the fighter that's winning, that knows that they're winning, costing the remainder of the fight?
Yeah, but then the bloke that knows the miles behind has to win by knockout. So, but WBC have an open scoring policy with all commissions that allow it. Now, the British Boxing Board of Control don't allow it, but we've got a show in Mexico on Friday, they do allow it. And you get to 4 rounds, and it's like, this is the score, then you get to 8 rounds. Now, obviously, some occasions, it's not always going to work. And I'm not saying this is something we're going to do, but I just think, like, I don't know, what's changed about boxing, really, over the last 10 years? Nothing, really. And, I don't know if that's a way forward, but I'm looking at it. I read everything. I read everything online. I know everybody's opinion. And I also know that we're under more pressure now in the UK, not just Matchroom, but as a business and as a sport, to up the levels because of what we're seeing in Riyadh season.
Loads, absolutely loads to unpack from that. We probably won't have time to unpack everything, but I thought that was fascinating from Eddie Hearn speaking to.
Well, it was a stream of consciousness, certainly, that went all over the place.
It did go all over the place, but Eddie's a bit like that. He will go all over the place. His brain works in a strange way sometimes. But I think what is clear, though, is that he's realising what we are seeing now, minus Riyadh season, is old and needs to be changed. Boxing, sometimes you go to these boxing events and it's still the same. And you're like, well, what's going on here? It is quite old, and way in which it's kind of... Look, you've been covering boxing for the best part of 40 years. What's different from when you started covering it to now?
I think, it's changed in the last year because cards aren't so top-heavy as they used to be.
No, but that's Riyadh season.
Yeah, that's Riyadh season.
I'm saying removing Riyadh season,
he's saying,
what's changed?
No, what's changed?
Nothing.
I tell you what's changed. We have a ton of heavyweights in the UK that we never had in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Frank Warren's got 8 of the top 10 heavyweights in the world at the moment. Heavyweight boxing is in this country.
No, yeah, the fighters. The fighters.
So
I'm talking
that's
about
changed.
the product.
No, but you asked me about the last 33 years.
The product, not the fighters per se.
The product, okay, the product. Eddie Hearn brought out Prize Fighter and changed the product, and it was successful. He worked through the coronavirus pandemic lockdown with Matchroom Square Garden, Fight Camp. You know, we lived in the Holiday Inn there while that was going on. It was great fun. We played cricket. We didn't go outside. There's the shift. I think the comparison that Eddie's making there, because A's with Adam, and we're going to speak later in Las Vegas, who's obviously out there with the UFC Noche event tonight. Eddie's seeing it through UFC eyes as well, and he has done for a while, and he does want to do more fast-moving, fast-action events. I do think that gap that we have, sometimes I like it, the gaps between fights in a boxing night, because everybody kind of catches up in that time. People talk about things.
It's great for us there, but from a TV viewer standpoint, it's awful. From a viewer standpoint, watching at home when there's like a 45-minute gap between co-main and main, it's awful.
Well, that's
when you switch off.
The only time I have that is when I'm like probably tonight, where I'll stay up till 6 a.m. to watch Canelo fight, and it does drag on when you've got loads of little fill-ins and films and docs and all those kind of things that are filling 45 minutes because the fight didn't go to order, that it didn't go 12 rounds, and they thought it would go 12 rounds. I do agree with more razzmatazz needed. I do think it needs a quicker pace. I do think smaller cards. I do think Prize Fighter. I like the fact he liked the procession, if you like, at the Olympics, where you get fight after fight after fight.
You go to fights, or you've been obviously covering fights, as I have now, on the West Coast. You know this for a fact. You're at home by 9 p.m.
Yeah,
it's done.
Because it's midnight in New York.
Yeah,
and it's 5 a.m. where we are.
It's done. People are in the bars by 9:30, and it's like it's a great night. I mean,
no, but we still got the press conference. We've got the writing to do.
I'm talking about the fans. I'm talking about the fans. We got to think of those. Forget us for a second. Just the fans. Eddie and Frank's events. I mean, main events are walking at 11:30. It's ridiculous.
The biggest thing for fans,
honestly, it's ridiculous.
You don't need to be, and this goes back to the belts. In the end, Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, the second richest fight in history, wasn't for a belt. It was for bragging rights between boxing and MMA. It made $500 million. There were belts on the line for Mayweather and Pacquiao, but Mayweather didn't need to fight for belts in the end. Certain fighters who reach a certain stage, Canelo doesn't need to fight for belts right now, really. Canelo versus Bivol, Canelo versus Beterbiev, Canelo versus David Benavidez. None of those need to be for belts. Fury Usyk too doesn't need to be for belts, because we know what that battle of each other is all about. Fury against Joshua doesn't need to be for a belt.
But the only problem with what you've just done there, and look, get in touch, by the way, 81089, you can call us at 03717 223344 to get involved in this conversation. The only thing that you've done there, the problem is you've named the superstars. The belts surely do mean something for those coming through.
I agree with Eddie. I know we've got to go to break. I agree with Eddie. And look, I think there's 69 belts available at one time in the world, with one Bridgerweight and 4 on the other 17 weight divisions. Yes, it means a lot to those guys because it means sponsorship. They can call themselves a world champion when they put their pipe and slippers on and speak to their great-grandchildren. They can say, I was a world champion, I lost to this guy and I beat that guy. Of course it means something to all those guys, and it must always mean something to those guys. But to the fans, which is, I do take your point about that, let's talk about the fans. They want to see great fights. That's all they want to see.
That's all they care about.
Yeah.
That's all they care about, not what the trinkets of someone carrying to the ring.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.